getting into the granularity level of skills actually will help you position your capabilities to be able to deliver not just for today, but also you get to plan out where the puck is going and how do you train your people and invest in the right levels of development of location or whatever strategies you're navigating through. And then ultimately, how do you make that optimized from an operating cost perspective too?
Welcome to Technovation. I'm your host, Peter High. Our broadcast today comes from our most recent Metis Strategy Digital Symposium. The topic of the conversation is Shaping the Story, Future-Oriented Talent and Innovation. The panelists who we'll hear from are Monica Caldas, the Global Chief Information Officer of Liberty Mutual, and Amir Kazmi, the Chief Information and Digital Officer of WestRock. The gentleman who led that conversation was Metis Strategy Partner and East Coast Office Lead, Alex Kraus. I hope you enjoyed the conversation.
I'm very excited about the next panel as well. What we wanted to talk about is the talent aspect. The increasing pace of technology and innovation, including game-changing trends such as the widespread adoption of AI, have really led to several paradigm shifts when it comes to technology skills and innovation as well. One interesting data point is that if you think about the average half-life of skills, it is now less than 5 years. And in some tech fields, even as little as 2.5 years. Now, you think about a 40-year career, that's a lot of skills to adopt and embrace as you go through your career. And we want to talk about this and how it affects everything that you all do. And I'm excited to be joined by two tech and digital leaders who have made talent and innovation one of their priorities. Please allow me to introduce Monica Caldas of Liberty Mutual and Amir Kazmi of WestRock. Monica is the global CIO of Liberty Mutual, a almost $50 billion insurance company, one of the largest in the world, headquartered in the Boston area. It is owned by its policyholders. It has 45,000 employees in 29 countries. Monica has been in her current role since early 2023, and she was previously at GE Transportation as the CIO there. Welcome, Monica.
Thank you for having me.
Glad to have you here. Amir is the Chief Information and Digital Officer of WestRock, a leading provider of paper and packaging solutions. They are headquartered in Atlanta and serve brands across the world and across industries. WestRock's operations span the globe, quite literally. They're in many continents. They have revenue of about $20 billion and 55,000 employees. Amir held various leadership positions at Lockheed prior to joining WestRock, and is also the former CEO and co-founder of a Silicon Valley-based nanomaterial tech startup. So lots of perspectives to share here. Welcome, Amir, as well.
It's nice to see you.
Well, great. So let's jump straight in. We heard a little bit of references in the previous panels about talent. And we know that talent is a fuel and the enabler of many of the capabilities. And there's a few aspects, that are particularly important. And Monica, I know you've thought about this quite a bit at Liberty Mutual, and I was wondering if you could share with us a little bit how you think about talent, the evolution of talent, but also making sure that the talent and skills remain up to date.
Yeah, I loved the facts that you shared at the beginning around the shelf life of a technology professional skill set and how it continuously needs to evolve. And we very much believe and see and have been experiencing that, especially when you apply that towards our ecosystem, which is quite large, but also we're a 100-year-old company. So as you can imagine, we have a diverse set of assets in technology, from modern tech to legacy technology, that we have to make sure that we still deliver business value every day. So for us, we think about skills all the time and how do we evolve those? So much so that last year we thought very deeply about how do we not only offer training to our employees, which we have always done, but how do we make that more tailored and customized to the individual, but also then connect that to the capacity demands that we have? And then how do we intersect that to the markets that we play in? We're in 27 countries. We have teams all over the world, and there are different types of skills and technology capabilities that are the labor market offers more of in particular parts of the world. So how do we intersect all that? So we developed a strategy called Skills to Fuel Our Future. And, it's a workforce strategy plan at the end of the day. But the way we approached it was we partnered with a consulting group and we said, look, the first step is we're going to have to survey all our internal 5,000 plus employees. And we have to do an assessment of where are we in this capabilities and maturity in terms of data skills, data engineering, software engineering. Even today, as we look a year after we did this assessment, we look at last year, we didn't assess for AI related skills in software engineering, right? So just there, you can see the evolution of this. But for us, we mapped over 150 skills. We then connected it to 18 domains and we did an assessment. That assessment then informed how and where we would invest in our training. And more importantly, what we're working on, we're not finished, but what we're working on right now is how do we take that training and help our employees have a variety of different career paths? And the way we think about it is, again, with information from our consulting partner is instead of the traditional ladder, I started as an analyst and I moved my way up. How do we look at skills and map skills to different jobs that maybe you didn't imagine yourself in and create this jungle gym or lattice of opportunities? So when you play it forward, you also then think about with AI now, we're implementing Copilot as an example, and we have over 1,000 of our engineers utilizing this capability. We're also looking at traditionally early career skills, and now those are being supported and augmented in many ways by different tools. And now we're looking at where traditional would have been a pyramid, does it now shape into a diamond? And how do we have the right amount of formal training, on the job training, and connect all that? So all of that I can triple click into, but I think in summary, I would say it's moving quickly. I think skills, getting into the granularity level of skills actually will help you position your capabilities as a technology organization to be able to deliver not just for today, but also you get to plan out where the puck is going and how do you train your people and invest in the right levels of development of location or whatever strategies you're navigating through. And then ultimately, how do you make that optimized from an operating cost perspective too? So there's a lot of layers in there, but I think at the macro, that speaks to how we're thinking about skills for the future.
I appreciate that. And I particularly like the idea of both the diamond from a pyramid to a diamond. And as you said, making sure you continuously map that. Yeah. Amir, let's maybe continue with that thread. So you also work for an organization with 55,000 employees in many different countries. How do you make sure that the people you're responsible for have the right skills and that you continuously update and refresh the skills in your organization?
Thanks. And I think what Monica covered in terms of, I really like the concept of skills of the future and then taking that back into, career and job families, working closely with our HR colleagues is also a key part. One other thing I would add is, in general, I heard a little bit of the prior session, pace of change is only accelerating, right? We can all kind of align on the fact that it's not slowing down. And so the key tenet is really embracing it and emphasizing it from a growth mindset perspective. So there are three things that come to mind. One of the things that we're doing is embedding growth mindset principles within the team. So think of it as a platform to encourage the talent to share learnings, not just the wins, but also the challenges and the ways to do things differently. Accelerate learnings, right? And hopefully learn something once that really cascaded across the organization quickly. We partnered with a company called Growth Stars, and that's been helpful. We continue to strengthen the muscle around taking calculated risks, embracing learning through failure and creating a culture and groundwork essentially for that future success. The second thing that comes to mind, Alex, is really cultivating an ecosystem of partners. When I say partners, it's really around learning again from both established companies that we all work with, but also startups. And really just in the essence of time, John Chambers, right, the former CEO of Cisco, he's got a podcast that he does. I think it's called Chambers Talks. It's worth dialing into it. He touches on this topic. The third thing I'll touch on really briefly is what we call future back thinking. It's not what we call, it's actually something that there's a lot of content written about it. There's a gentleman named Bob Johansen who's written quite at length about it. We brought him in. And the thing we've done practically speaking there is really to take membership with a group called the CTO Forum. And that's been very helpful in learning together with, frankly, emerging technologies such as Gen AI and so on. What we do is we bring in both academia and peers from other industries and companies, both on leadership principles, but also on the emerging technologies.
That's great. And I mean, if I can follow up, you mentioned a number of fantastic ideas here, but I know you're really big on metrics and measurement, as I know Monica is as well. But when it comes to learning and making time for learning, but also making the priority, how do you tie the sharing of information and sharing of learning? How do you make that part of everyone's responsibility and make sure that in the need to prioritize day to day, that people continue to make that a priority?
That's a good question, Alex. I think I was going to reach back and see if the book is on the shelf here, but there's a great book by John Doerr called Measure What Matters, right? And it's all about objectives and key results. I think aligning and prioritizing not just traditional goal setting, but really tightly aligning what is the objective we're trying to hit, what's the value that we anticipate, in other words, what's the key result, and having a both aspirational side to that, and also, here's what we're targeting, but here's the aspirational goals. I think that goes a long way in really helping to create a prioritized set of key, objectives and key results. Because if everything is a priority, nothing is a priority. So this is the mechanism that can help with that. I think an example, the other part of your question was around innovation. So just briefly, an example around a digital innovation example that illustrates this is we've been working around concept of smart packaging. As you said, we're a packaging company. And what we realize is customers expect more from our packages. And so we're on a journey to embed digital insights within the package. So this can come in the form of connected packaging, IoT connected packaging solutions. And as an example, the ability to help customers with brand building, to know where the package is or where your product is in the supply chain, and to know the quality. And why does this matter? I mean, if you think globally, right, and this is a little dated, I think, according to the World Food Program, a third of the food produced is lost or wasted globally. Even if that number is lower than that, it's still too much. So we think that's an example where perhaps packaging can contribute and continue to contribute to make an impact, right, in terms of supply chain. And the other thing I would say is we're also working on these solutions with various industries. So I mentioned food, but think of automobiles. And imagine if the package could talk to you. What would it tell you about the product that it's carrying? And so we think, from a long-term perspective, these are the type of problems and solutions we're trying to solve, because they also play a key role in terms of safety of the communities that we serve in. If that makes sense. So I'll pause there.
That's wonderful. No, that's great. What a wonderful goal and success here. And Monica, I know you're really big about measurement and making sure you stay on target. And I was wondering if you can shift a little bit. It's great to achieve results, but also maybe as important to talk about them, to make sure you get feedback, you inform stakeholders of various sorts. And what we often hear about is this idea of executive storytelling. How do you tell a story to the right audience in the right way? And I wonder if you can speak a little bit how you go about that.
Yeah, I agree. I think that when technologists get together in a room, we all of a sudden get into this foreign language of KPIs, SLAs, MTTR, et cetera, et cetera. And we understand each other. But I think what we have to take a step back is we have our own language in technology. And what I like to say is when we are in service of a business that we support and that we enable, that we bring products to life through supply chain or manufacturing or services, as in financial services that I'm in currently, the reality is it's a team sport. And you can't play a team sport if half the team doesn't know how to play the sport or what it is you're saying. So it is really important on the communication side. And I'm glad you hit it on that topic, because we don't often talk about, well, how do different people do that? For us, we approach it in two ways. The first way is thinking about the personas and who are we interacting with, and how do we simplify or create that bridge so that the concepts we're talking about are approachable, and that we simplify some of the statements to make sure that people can actually understand and contribute. The second piece is, and I think this is evolving as more and more people have to engage with technology in different ways, is the digital IQ and the data literacy of the people around the table, the executives around the table, it is no longer okay to have that be one person's job. Oh, it's a tech person's job to know X, Y, and Z. While we have accountability for tech stewardship, we have accountability for how do you engineer with quality, how do you protect your assets, and so many other things. We also have accountability to bring other people along. And so the rest of the team that's around that table, we do a program called Executech, and that is when we create a set of modules. We do in-person learning as well as self-paced learning, and we bring that across the globe to all our executives and actually have cascaded that further in the organization so we can elevate the digital IQ of the dialogue. So for example, if we're talking about integrating with a third party and we're talking about APIs, we no longer start the conversation at step 0, which is, well, what is an API? We start the conversation at step 3 or 4, which is like, well, I know we have this capability. How do we make it faster? What kind of data can we actually exchange? And how do we continue to protect our customers' data, et cetera, et cetera? So just moving the needle a little bit to the right, I think is a great starting point. But for us, it is very important. And maybe I'll make it real beyond that. Gen AI is on everybody's mind, especially last year. When we started having the dialogue, we turned on the internal Liberty GPT capability in partnership with Microsoft and Azure footprint within 3 weeks of it being available. But what we noticed is we had 10 users that were on it. And we said, well, you know what? We can't just say digital IQ. You've got to know what Gen AI is. We actually had to say, actually, there's a lot of dimensions to it. There's a responsible AI component around protecting our data. There's an understanding around the models and the capabilities currently, the hallucination potential. There is also what we deem appropriate use and not appropriate use of the tool. And so we went through that whole stakeholder analysis, the personas, and then communicated deliberately with different groups in the organization. Fast forward to today, we have over 10,000 users on our internal GPT. We have 4 use cases that are in production, and we have a backlog that is generating. Why do I highlight that? I highlight that because we invested the time in digital IQ. We recognize that the personas were different. If you're a data scientist in the company, we're going to talk to you about the technology and the capability in a different way if you are in the front lines claims adjuster. Right. And so being very thoughtful about how you reach people and how you tell the story and how you actually simplify in order to make sure you're actually solving a problem rather than just jargon of the function. I think that applies to everyone beyond tech, actually.
Wonderful. Great. Talking about a good story from 10 to 10,000 on your own instance of ChatGPT. That's fantastic. Amir, I want to come back to you on the topic of storytelling a little bit. I mean, both of you work across borders and across cultures. And part of the storytelling, obviously, is, of course, the data, but part of that is also finding the right message. Monica talked about the personas. How do you make sure that from a cultural perspective, you not only address the different levels of understanding the digital and tech IQ, but also kind of the cultural nuances that are so important, especially when raising potentially sensitive or difficult to discuss topics?
So Alex, look, I think it starts with what's the purpose of the company, right? And so our purpose as a company is to, literally our purpose is innovate boldly and package sustainably. So I think when you lead with the purpose, frankly, I think it's inspiring. It encourages the team to take calculated risks. And then it's developing some of those innovative solutions that we discussed earlier. And I think the key is that you've got to provide avenues to take calculated risk, and then you've got to provide platforms to create and cultivate the learnings. And that's why I talked about growth mindset earlier. And to your point, the key in all of that is there's a common learning journey, because it's not going to come out perfectly. You and I were talking, I think, prior to this, and you asked, how do you define some of that? Like, for example, boldly. And you got to look at it on both axes, which is outcome oriented as well as effort centric. And so you want to recognize effort, but then again, going back to our OKR's mantra is look at, what's the value of the outcome. But again, I'll close with purpose matters, right? And I think a purpose around innovate boldly, package sustainably is the guiding light for us as an organization.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that.
If I can just jump in, because we were talking about books and sharing, I would add to what Amir said. When you are having to communicate across borders and telling the story and reaching people in China versus Chile or Brazil, et cetera, you do have to connect with the local nuance. And how do you learn that? So that would be one. I would maybe make a recommendation on a book. It's about 10 years old, but we've actually used it quite a bit here at Liberty. When we started doing big bodies of work, we usually bring this out. It's called the Culture Map. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it is an excellent, thoughtful way to help you recognize the local nuance and understand it, and then connect it to what you're saying and reach people in different ways. So thought I'd offer that out for everyone.
No, thank you for sharing that. We do a lot of stakeholder mapping, and I think layering in the cultural piece is certainly very important. Good. We only have a few minutes left, and I want to, Terry, if you don't mind, pull up the results of our audience poll if we could. So interesting. So we asked, what's the most critical trait or talent for the future for your team? And interestingly, we got two things that stand out: resilience and adaptability, and critical thinking. Monica and Amir, do you want to quickly provide your perspective now that you're seeing the results here?
Resiliency in terms of leadership, going back to the pace of change is accelerating. In fact, on CIO.com, I wrote an article with Dan Roberts recently about this. So I'll just say it makes a lot of sense. And, I think it goes into our discussion around technological change. Today, we're talking about Gen AI. Tomorrow, maybe something else. So,
great. And Monica, are you surprised that subject matter expertise is scoring as it is?
No, and especially because of the fact that we're doing all the skills work, we're finding that it evolves so fast. If you think about certain spaces like cyber, you do need to have a certain level of subject matter expertise to go faster. Not because you'll know all the answers, but you'll have a foundation and a certain, what I call intuition. So I think these are all important. I think resiliency, like Amir said, and critical thinking, I would say I'd start there. But there are areas where if you want to go faster, you have to have a foundation and a certain level of intuition of how to navigate it. But at the end of the day, you've got to be adaptable and learn. So that makes sense when you think about the macro.
That's right. And it's not an easy question in the sense that all of them are important, as you said. So we just forced this a little bit. Good, excellent. So we only have a few seconds left. Amir and Monica, first of all, thank you. I wanted to very quickly put one last question to each of you, if we can answer that quickly. You're both technology and digital leaders, but what other functional area interests you the most in your respective organizations or in your past? And what do you think is on your list of learning and acquiring knowledge about? Monica, maybe quickly to you first.
Well, I am currently very much into the bowels of large language models and reference architectures for Gen AI. So that is where my interest is. And I dabble on the weekend with Dolly and all kinds of experiments. So that's where I'm spending some energy.
Wonderful. Amir, how about you?
I think I'll add to Monica really quickly, trying to understand the first principles behind RAG and all the other components. So Chip Wars is a good book. In the thralls off. It's interesting, especially in light of all the conversations around chips these days.
Wonderful. Thank you.